Good evening and welcome to the Tempe City Council work study session for February 1st, 2018 here in the Harry E. Mitchell Government Center. The first item on our agenda is a call to the audience for the issue review session items. There are no committee of the whole items listed under section 4A and 4B this evening. Audience members do have up to 3 minutes to address the council on any of the items listed on this agenda. If you'd like to speak on an item, could you please fill out a speaker's card, which can be found in the back of the council chambers, and hand it to our assistant city clerk, and then we'll make sure we'll get you in line to speak. So I don't have any cards. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under any of the items listed on the issue review session? Could you get my attention? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. The next is item 2A, is Together Tempe, formerly known as Help to Others.
Is that official?
I don't know. H2O.
No, not the official change.
Oh, the official change. Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Welcome, Val. Lesson.
Mayor Mitchell, members of the council, good afternoon. I'm Valerie Kime-Trujillo, the Deputy Human Services Director, and I serve as the Executive Director at Tempe Community Council. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. It was exactly this time a year ago that we gave you a status report of the H2O utility bill donation program. As you know, that program is a critical funding source for TCC's agency review process in an effort to fund the nonprofits in the community to meet the many needs of our residents. We appreciated the time to meet with each of you since then, and we're here today to give you an update of some of the progress and a few of the definite goals that we have. I now want to introduce you to two of our TCC board members that are going to share our formal presentation this evening and are leading this effort for TCC's Resource Development Committee. And that is Jay Schroeder to my left and Rustin Shearer to my right. And I will turn it over to these gentlemen to take it away.
So I'll go first. Again, my name is Rustin Shearer, and I'm on the board with TCC, serve with Jay, and I want to thank our other board members who are here in the audience with us as well for their time, and thank you for that introduction, Valerie. So Together Tempe, we like it a lot better than H2O, and we think that it makes a lot more sense when we start communicating with residents of this great city as to what this program actually does, which is help support human services in the city of Tempe, as opposed to a utility bill assistance program, which it's often confused with. So we put together a brief presentation, and we just wanted to go through that with you this evening, and then answer any questions on the back end. Jay and I will tag team the slides. So first thing that you see is Together Tempe. This is the new logo and the new tagline. Again, formerly the Help to Others program. We think it's representative of what the spirit of Tempe really is, which is working together. And that's what we talk about a lot as members of the TCC board. How can we work together to make the city and things in the city better? Moving to the second slide, we have been at this for a few months now, and we just wanted to briefly touch on a few of the accomplishments that we had related to an overhaul of this program. Primarily, the rebranding, oh, thank you, is one thing that we want to talk a little bit about, and we'll talk about that in the first goal section. But we also wanted to note that, we gathered input from the city. We met with several city staff. We, of course, met with each of you independently over the course of the last several months to talk about what we were planning to do and the things that we were moving forward with, which we were excited about. Gathered, again, some good feedback and some good data, and really strengthened, I think, the partnership with the city and city staff moving forward on what we see as accomplishable in the next phase, and then what we could get after straight away as the low-hanging fruit. So these are some of the things that we think are important to mention. Of course, the reason for the second review or overall of the program, we've seen donations collected via the water bill, the water sewage bill in decline, and participation numbers also declining. So that was really the impetus for getting on this program. And of course, we've shared this with you as well. We see this as the universe, at least for the utility bill component of what we can achieve from this particular program. About $500,000 we feel like is out there and available to be helpful with respect to delivering additional funding for agency review and for human services activities and programming and nonprofit work here in the city of Tempe. Let's talk about program goals. These are what we would consider our fiscal year goals. First was the rebrand and the awareness campaign. Again, talking about what Help to Others used to be, which is now Together Tempe, and really what the program is, which again is not a utility bill assistance program. You're going to see some new messaging on the utility bill itself. We've got new messaging on the envelope as well. We're going to have additional content included in the annual stuffers that we get for those bills, as well as some other substantial marketing on our end with respect to togethertempe.org and the materials that you'll see pushed out, in addition to working with the city to produce some of the videos highlighting the agencies that are providing these human services. Again, talked about really the reason for the name change. Want to emphasize, I think, in the public that every dollar that's collected as part of this program is going to be utilized for human services assistance as opposed to a utility bill assistance. We think that that's very important. We also want folks to understand that really behind the name is the mission of TCC and what we all stand for and why we're doing the things that we're doing in the community. So as you've heard before, you know, connecting those in need with those who care is really what TCC is all about. And we feel like, you know, giving a little changes a lot. Together Tempe really represents, again, our view as the TCC board. I'll turn it over to Jay for the rest of the goals.
Okay, thank you. Mayor and Council, the first goal, of course, was rebranding and building awareness. Our second goal is more of an internal goal to the city, and that's to educate and train. So you'll note here our program goals are really fiscal year, meaning June 31st of this year, what we want to accomplish. And so our internal focus will be with these departments in the city. And I'll make the distinction, educate what this program is, what its intentions are, what the scope is, what the possibilities are, but also train staff by giving them some scripts. As individuals change their address or new residents move in or new businesses, what can be that way in which city staff can be an advocate and enroll people in the program. So these are the departments that we'll be focusing on before the end of this fiscal year. So that's our goal number 2. Goal 3 is really more external, and that's the community. So we've identified 5 areas that we want to focus on. We'll identify some key neighborhood associations and do a roadshow with them. And we have a 5-minute roadshow, a 15-minute roadshow, and there'll be questions. The annual neighborhood workshop, TCC is sponsoring a care fair. We'll have a booth there and do some education. We'll identify some civics groups, as well as we want to experiment identifying a corporate partner this year. We're not sure exactly what that means, but it could be a matching program for that month in terms of what the city raises, they'll match it, or getting their employees involved in something connected to donating or increasing participation. So that's our 3rd goal. Our 4th goal is let's increase participation and let's increase the dollars coming in. And so we want to see that graph start to flatten out or increase. And it's our feeling by rebranding, awareness, education, training, external and external, that we'll be able to change that trend line and get more people participating and more dollars into the program. So our ask of council, other than your questions this evening, is for you first to participate or continue participating in the program, and in doing so be a model for our community. Our second ask is really to support the program as we move forward this year and following years, if there is opportunity for us to speed things up or help us prioritize or give us feedback, or as you've done, give us new ideas. And thirdly, what we're asking you to do is communicate through your own vehicles. Many of you have formal and informal ways you communicate with the community, Facebook, coffee conversations, and we'll give you some materials to support as you talk to community groups about being an advocate for participation in the program. So that's our ask of you this evening. So with that, we're open to feedback, questions, thoughts.
Yes, Councilman Navarro.
Mayor, thank you. Appreciate the conversation, and this is great. I mean, it's outstanding to bring this, not only this subject up, but I know we have other related subjects that go down the same vein, and it kind of relates to our marketing, kind of relates to advocating the services that we do. I think you guys did a great job on showing the trends and how it's going down, and that's kind of showing, you know, the fact that we're not putting enough attention to how we deliver our message or how we get our message out there. on this program and various other programs. I know that eventually we're going to be coming up on hopefully redoing our website, hopefully redoing the interactive of how friendly and how more effective that website could be and advertising that way. I think it's up to our council, I think, to really have a strong conversation on marketing budget. You know, I think even Colby's brought up some of the money that we spend is pretty minimal, trying to get, you know, information out. And I think it's an opportunity for us to have that conversation on what we will need to do and how we need to increase our budget and look at the benefits on top of that. Coming from an advertising background, I really do understand that you kind of have to really put your money to make money, so to speak. And these are the opportunities that we need to do. We got a new branding label, we got new branding material, the opportunities now, and I'm very excited about, you know, what you guys are presenting. In addition, I think it's also an opportunity for staff to, not only with your program, but with a variety of other programs, when we do have our community coffee talks or we're out with the community, to say, hey, you are going out here, you need to say something on this, you need to say something on this. We need to do that. And I know there's a lot of new programs. I know we get busy and we get sidetracked too, but I think it's on to us and our staff to keep on continually knowing that we have to give these messages out all the time. So it's a challenge to us, challenge to everyone else. And I appreciate your guys' thoughtfulness and putting together a great diagram and educating us, but our opportunity is right now, and I think we can do it. I really do. So I'm pretty encouraged. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Granville?
Just a quick one. So one of the issues that tends to come up, and we met for, what, an hour or two about this before this presentation. And I just don't understand. So when I give $1, it's because I've bought into the idea, right? Like, I'm going to give a little bit of money, it's fine, I'll never even notice it. And I probably never come back to it because I'm on auto pay, actually. It's the real reason why I never come back to it. But if it were indexed for inflation, and so the next year it was $1.02, and next year it was $1.05, that would, I think, really help, right? Because I'm never going to go back over 5 more cents to help you with inflation. What was the reasoning for not including that as part of your path forward? Or even when someone signs up, says, do you want to give $1? Do you want to give $1 and index it for inflation? We'll do it automatically for you. I've just never really understood that.
Councilman Granville, I think we have obviously had a lot of thoughts on the potential of other dollar amounts on the bill, whether it's inflation or whether people just want to give more. And so we are looking and working with the customer service folks as we get a new system to really start building those features in. There would be an opportunity if you want to have an extra 20 and you want to do that instead of the $1 this month, and maybe you give it one time a year, or folks who want to give $5 every month, so that there'd be an opportunity for us to build in those varieties.
There's just a limitation of the system right now?
Yeah.
For now. I mean, we've had ideas, and you get inside even about rounding up.
Yeah.
And that makes it more conscious for you as you're doing that, to round up. But it's a system limitation at this point in time. The ideas are on the table.
Okay.
Exactly, and they've been really good at including us in those conversations, and will continue to do that as they get the system, the RFP out on the street. So,
Councilman QB?
So I want to give a shout out to Jenny Norton, Bob Ramsey, because they've been amazing contributors to this fund over the years and really have held it up with matches and just original donations. But I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to try to capture the state charitable tax credits. I know that Tempe Community Action Agency is a recipient of the charitable tax credit, and TCC is not. I know you have to be a direct service provider, but right now the money goes to TCC and is distributed through agency review. And
it actually never leaves the city, but we are responsible
right.
for the actual distribution of those dollars, correct?
But I'm wondering if it could be directed to either a charitable organization. Well, I mean, it could be a pass-through or something through TCAA, so we can capture the enormous amount of philanthropy that comes through the state charitable tax credit, $400 a person, $800 per couple. That's an enormous amount of money that could go to support local charities. I know with Tempe Leadership, when we had our Shower Power project, we raised all of our money basically in the last few weeks of January just by going to the state tax credit. Is there any way that we could work through that system or get TCC listed as a charitable tax credit organization through the Department of Revenue.
That is something we need to go back and revisit. It does require the majority of your clientele being below poverty.
Right.
And I need to revisit that because even though we only have a few direct service programs, most of those folks that we are serving, I mean, our tax site alone is 2,000 people. So we could really take a look at that again as we have not been getting in that. So thank you for.
Or could it go through TCAA? And I mean, maybe that's complicated because you guys are managing the program and TCAA is also receiving funds through agency review, but is there some creative way, legal way, of course, that we could do this that would encourage that kind of donation?
I think it's worth us taking a look ourselves with our direct service component and maybe even, I don't know how they consider the 47 agencies we fund, they're all serving below poverty as well. But looking at kind of where there's an opportunity to make that case in the state charitable tax credit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
definitely look at that. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Anana Savage?
I just got a question, and I'm wondering, when you guys talk about the decline from 12 through 17, did you see any trends in certain areas? Was it, like based on a heat map? Were you able to kind of whittle that down, or was it people that went from paying with checks to being automatic pay? Were you able to identify any area? I mean, 'cause that's 2,500 people that decided not to do it. Any idea of what changed?
We did not look at heat maps. We haven't analyzed the zip codes or anything. I think some awareness that we came to just in the last couple of weeks is that after the 2012 change to the system and how the dollar was put on the bill, there was a lot of kickback about that, a lot of unhappiness with community members about how that was added on to the bill and discomfort with that. And at this point, it's an option for people to have it on their bill or not have it on their bill. And I think when you get that option, it's easier to opt out than to keep it on your bill.
And then I noticed in the background material, you mentioned something about reaching out to businesses. What's the game plan for that to move forward, or is that kind of future?
Well, between now and the end of this fiscal year, we want to identify one corporate partner, as I mentioned.
Oh, I see.
And that may be, again, through matching for the month or getting our employees to participate or us going into that company and doing some education. So that is our focus between now and the end of the year, to find one corporate partner to support this program.
I think the additional opportunity there, it's a great question. We wanted to start with our emphasis on the utility bill itself, and then sort of phase 2 and phase 3 would be about the broader universe, really marketing togethertempe.org and just going after those partnerships on a one-to-one and a strategic basis. And to answer, I think, your first question, no, we didn't really look at those demographics. We just sort of said, hey, the arrow is going this way, and we need to reverse that. So we started really at the macro
I
level.
see you asked the question on the slide. That's,
Yeah.
I thought
But
maybe
no,
you would have the answer.
it gets really to the audiences that we need to target.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
who we need to go after. So a lot of thinking's into that and certainly on the right track. So we appreciate that.
Well, I like I said when we met earlier, I love the name change. I think it's great. It really does speak Tempe. I mean, HTO is very important. That's great. But I think this definitely is well more suited for what your mission is and what you guys are doing. And I think maybe even too that would raise some eyebrows of people that wanting to give too. So, I mean, I think it's a win-win situation for a lot of people. And I agree with Joel. I mean, we need to do our part too to help make sure that we're all, talking about it and marketing it ourselves. So I appreciate the work. I think it's going to be a really positive change moving forward.
And I'd like to add that I do see an opportunity for us to meet with the chamber and have that discussion about how can we even get the information out to the businesses and help them understand what this program is and what it does for the community, and see if there's partnerships there maybe readily available that we're just missing.
Well, and I would think too, even like the restaurant associations and the DTA, I mean, I think there's just a lot of different groups and organizations that would be easier to tackle it that way than one business at a time. And then, of course, I think ourselves, when businesses are coming to us, to the city, maybe they're new businesses or whatever it may be, I think that needs to be part of the discussion too.
And I think the tagline, Together Tempe, I mean, even if you did little cards, even stickers, I mean, something that would just, the tagline, from a marketing standpoint, I think it will really help, that businesses have it, oh, Together Tempe, it's like, it's obviously the name's great, we all come together anyways, but if we could figure out a way to brand that even more with the chamber, with businesses, with the DTA, even with our neighborhood associations. That's another good point to get that information out. We have a great vehicle to get information out to our neighborhood associations. That'd be a great vehicle to, we could come up with some good slogans for that. I mean, together, Tempe is perfect, so, because we are together. One of the things I think is important for us, as Councilman Navarro mentioned, is when we do our coffee talks or roundtables and so forth, I think it's also, we need to be conscious, but also I would look to our staff, our council aides and mayor's aides and so forth, to really help implement that in our talking points when we talk. I mean, so don't forget, together Tempe, we're a caring, giving community. We're always known as that type of a community. And just the more you repeat it, the more people grab onto it. So I think it's good as well. Councilwoman McCubey?
So
Thank you.
Sorry. Since this is essentially a donate local campaign, encouraging people to give where you live, I'm wondering whether we could have a reach out to Local First Arizona, because they're working on a potential partnership with the city of Tempe on a green certification program. And a big part of sustainability is social and economic factors and finding stability for our residents who are facing those challenges. So I think it might be an actually good item to add on to their certification list, and at least they can promote it, if not have it be a checkoff.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And I would mention that our PIOs have been really wonderful. They're working on a little blurb in the Tempe Today for March. Our city manager mentioned the possibility of even including a one-page, a one-panel insert into the water bill, if we can get that, through in March as well, just to unveil this whole idea and make people aware that there's something new, and it's hopefully get people excited about it.
We're going to have to do something more than a little blurb.
And start talking about, yes.
If
and
we could ramp that up.
We're
like
looking at
that
social
one-
media,
Right.
and we're looking at certainly starting to get out to Rotary, Kiwanis. So there's kind of a lot of conversation about it in a lot of different places in the community.
Well, maybe if we do the insert, which I think I would certainly support doing an insert, then that's something that we could use and for other purposes too, right? So it
That's
would
what
be
I was
kind of a
thinking too,
twofold
yes.
idea. So, and not that you're asking me my opinion, but I'm going to give it to you that I think that would be a better option.
Absolutely, we will have a brochure developed.
Councilman Schreier?
Mayor, I was just going to say, I mean, I think one of the things that we can do, and you talked about this, Jay talked about it, that we can really do to help is the social media piece. And if you can send us, and I don't know, it may work differently for each person, but whether it's an email or a direct message on Twitter or on Facebook, whatever, just to let us know when is kind of a push to promote stuff, even if you've got some, like, I hate to say canned language, but like language about what's going on at that time or what the push is at that time. Just poke us and prod us, and at least I'll speak for myself, like, don't think because, oh, David didn't post something last time, we're not going to contact him this time. Like, keep sending me stuff and I'll retweet or share on Facebook or whatever and get stuff out. I mean, I just think that's a good way that we can help, especially those of us who've got, really active social media in the community and have a lot of Tempe folks on there. It's a good way to get the word out for sure.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, and that's one of our asks.
Yeah.
As you formally and informally communicate,
That's it.
take the opportunity.
It's easy.
And we will create some of that.
My ask is don't give up on us. Like, if we forget or don't do it once, keep prodding
pushing
us.
it.
We'll keep sending stuff.
Don't get content.
All right, thank you.
Great.
And a good image.
Thank you so much.
Good vision.
This is really good. This is good stuff. Thank you.
Visual.
All right, next item. Tempe Aquatics Needs Assessment. Mr. Burke and Mr. Wagner. What's going on, guys? Is it what, I know it's 10 degrees above normal, but were you already talking about water parks?
Look at both of these guys in suit and tie.
I know, suits and tie for both
For
of you.
both of you, we got to get used to this.
So uncomfortable.
This is awesome.
Oh my God, that'd
No.
be amazing. The floaty things on the arms, fully immersible.
We can do that for next time, not a problem.
Right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Keith Burke, Community Services Deputy Director of Recreation, and with me tonight is Sean Wagner, Community Services Manager for Kiwanis Recreation Center and the Tempe Aquatics Program. Tonight we are here to present the Aquatics Needs Assessment Study and seek council input. As a result of the relocation of the Tempe Beach Park Splash Playground, Mayor and Council asked staff to update the aquatics portion of the 2001 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Harris Associates was selected to examine existing aquatic facilities, identify gaps in service, and develop a plan to meet the needs for current and future generations. This study is intended to set the strategic direction for Tempe Aquatics facilities and service delivery while updating capital improvement plan, enhancing the quality of life for Tempe residents, linking to a strategic priority 3.16. Ayers Associates used a combination of information from the 2001 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, along with census data and the Urban Open Space Plan to begin the research that guided the planning process. It was important to gather community input through public meetings, online and on-site resident surveys, as well as inspecting current aquatic facilities. Population density, public transportation, and service radius locations of existing facilities were other factors used as strategies in this process. Moving forward, using this information will allow us to meet and exceed industry standards. Sean will now talk about the assessment itself and the results from the study.
Thanks, Keith. There are a variety of aquatic facilities and all play a part in delivering quality service to our community. An aquatic center is a multi-generational pool with a variety of amenities for all ages and abilities. A standard lap pool typically has 6 to 8 lap lanes used by individuals looking to maintain and enhance their fitness. Splash playgrounds and splash play areas are typically 15,000 square feet or greater with various water features including water rings, curtains, buckets, misters, and as well as ground spray features. Splash pads, on the other hand, are smaller than 1,500 square feet with fewer splash play amenities. A civic spray pad is a small play area found in urban environments that primarily have ground spray features. Pet spray pads are located in existing dog parks and include spray features for our four-legged friends. The following map is an inventory of aquatic facilities in and around Tempe whose service areas reach Tempe residents, including those in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa, and Chandler. Industry metrics were used to determine the service reach of each facility type. An aquatic center generally has a service reach of 2 miles, while the reach of a splash playground and a splash pad is less, 1 mile and a half mile respectively. The large pink circles represents the reach of an existing aquatic center. The smaller light pink circle represents the reach of a splash playground. The reach of a splash pad is represented by the small light blue circles. This next slide illustrates the service reach of those public aquatic facilities located in Tempe. One of the splash pads within the city limits is located at the Tempe Marketplace, and there is a pool at the Tempe YMCA. The remaining 7 public aquatic facilities are owned and operated by the city of Tempe. These include 1 aquatic center at the Kiwanis Recreation Center wave pool, 2 outdoor pools at the Escalante Community Center in McClintock High School, 3 splash pads at JC, Hudson, and Escare Parks, and 1 splash playground at Kiwanis Park. Data from this map compared to other data such as population density can be used to get an even clearer picture of where deficiencies may exist in our current system. The Aquatic Needs Assessment Study stressed the importance of maintaining and enhancing our existing aquatic facilities. In the current 5-year Aquatics Infrastructure and Equipment Replacement CIP, projects have been identified to maintain and enhance some of those aquatic facilities. JC, Hudson, and Escare splash pads have been identified for replacement of their spray features. The Kiwanis Park Splash Playground is currently under construction and expected to open this summer. Escalante is currently renovating its slide structure with plans to address the aging deck, drainage, and shade in the fall of 2018.
1 second, Sean.
Sure.
Vice Mayor?
So can I just ask you a quick question? Where is the, and I didn't notice in the background material, the McClintock pool, the second phase of that, is that not in our 5-year CIP?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
I'm actually getting to that in the next bullet point.
fantastic, okay.
No worries.
Yep.
Last year, Phase 1 renovations were completed at McClintock Pool. These renovations included competitive pool expansion, new deck surface, movable bulkheads, and new pump room equipment. Planning for Phase 2 improvements will begin this summer and include renovations to the current wader pool and water slide tower. Additionally, the current bathhouse is in need of restoration, and staff is identifying funding opportunities for its much-needed renovation. The Kiwanis Recreation Center wave pool was built in the early 1990s. In 2011, the wave machine was replaced, and the pool surface and beach area was repaired. While these renovations were necessary to continue providing existing services, it does not address the need for additional amenities to keep it in line with other aquatic facilities in the area. In conjunction with the service reach of existing facilities, population density was used to determine the location and need for additional aquatic facilities. Each of the previous plans identified slightly different metrics for the number of aquatic facilities for a community the size of Tempe. Staff averaged these metrics and identified a ratio of 1 aquatic facility per 18,000 residents. Tempe's current population is estimated to be 170,000. Applying the above ratio, Tempe should have 9 aquatic facilities. This leaves a current deficit of 2. Keeping in mind that the goal of this plan is to achieve a level of service that will eventually meet the needs and demands of Tempe's 2030 population, which is projected to be 225,000. Anticipating this population growth, Tempe would need a total of 6 additional aquatic facilities by the year 2030. This map uses population density and proximity to other aquatic facilities to represent areas that are potentially underserved. The darker areas are both highly populated and without an aquatic facility nearby. The industrial zones are outlined in yellow. Community services and public works staff collaboratively identified areas that were suitable for aquatic facilities. This analysis identified 2 areas in the community that are currently underserved, which are outlined in red above. Clark and Harrelson Parks were identified as good candidates for aquatic facilities. Clark Park is an ideal location for an aquatic facility as it would fill a service gap in the northwest portion of the city. It should be noted the Clark Pool was closed in 2010 and is a likely reason for this gap in service. Harrelson is also recommended as a worthy location as this area has a high population density and it would provide an aquatic facility in South Tempe. Currently, the South Tempe area does not have any splash playgrounds or splash pads. Adding a splash play feature here would address the current gap in service in this area. Staff will conduct community outreach in these areas before a final location has been selected. Adding these 2 facilities would address Tempe's current need for an additional aquatic facility. It does not, however, meet the demands of future population. At this time, Keith will discuss priorities and future recommendations.
Thanks, Sean. Formulating preliminary recommendations from the study would begin the process to design a new aquatic facility at Clark Park. To maximize service areas inside Tempe and minimize areas remaining underserved, staff will work with the community to explore Harrelson Park as a new splash park location. Furthermore, it's recommended that new amenities are added to maintain the KRC wave pool as a state-of-the-art facility. Renovation features can include a lazy river, flow rider, and other water park type features. Future recommendations, creating a 10-year CIP plan, including public outreach and input from stakeholders, will help identify the additional 4 aquatic facilities needed to meet the estimated 2030 population demands. In addition, repairing and enhancing current infrastructure will be necessary in maintaining the aquatic asset management plan. Community Service and Public Works will begin the process of updating the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which will include this study and any aquatic suggestions developed from the Rio Salado Park Master Plan that is currently underway. Sustainability practices such as urban cooling, water conservation, and purification filtration technologies will be considered as part of the planning process of any new facility that we construct. Tonight, we are seeking council input to initiate the following priorities identified in the study: to begin the Clark Park aquatic design as identified in the current 5-year CIP, identify a new aquatic facility in South Tempe considering Harrelson Park as one of the possibilities, initiate community outreach for Kiwanis Recreation Center renovation, and explore future aquatic facilities and pet spray pad locations. This concludes our presentations. We'll answer any questions at this time.
Yes. Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mayor. And just my experience with neighborhood meetings lately, how's the reach out so far? I know you guys are pinpointing the areas that that we see as potential needs. Has there been already communication with neighborhoods about we're thinking about doing these things, or how did the process go?
Well, some of the community outreach started with the part of the study itself for residents to come out and give input. This is the first as far as delivering the actual final aquatic study itself. But moving forward, we would have those extra outreach meetings and discussions before diving in. There is a current 5-year plan in place that Clark Park Design is already currently in budgeted for the CIP process.
And that's great. And Mayor, what I'm trying to get into the effect with our community outreach, obviously we'll get the input of, we would like to see this, and kind of have the wish list, so to speak, and see where we can whittle down from there. So.
And one of the things, thank you for this presentation. This is kind of exciting, especially down in the southern part of the city, at Harrelson Park, where I know there's a lot of families that live down there. the 10-year CIP, if we could tighten that up, and make it shorter as opposed to having 10 years to get somewhere south. We're already, like you mentioned, we're working at the 5-year CIP with Clark. Now, and I know, like I'll call it, all of us have received some emails, oh, we don't want something at Clark Park, oh, we do. I mean, we have to look at the future, what the trends are going to be in terms of people moving into our community and what really the overall needs are. Even if it may be a scaled down version, but I think as we go through the process, we'll find out. But we also need to be thinking long term. So please don't lose sight of that when we look long term. And if we could shorten it instead of 10 years, especially down south, I think that's something that would be interesting for us to look at.
And we're currently working on the next CIP budget for next year, and we're looking at trying to get a new aquatic amenity identified in that CIP process, which could be a new location anywhere in the city, which could be south. So could be in the next 5-year process. If
Councilman Cubie, then Councilman Granville.
So looking at Clark Park, I know there was a study done in public outreach, and there were 28 responses. And so it's listed as a preference, 54% for the splash playground, 46% for the pool, but that's only, total of 28 responses.
Correct.
So, not necessarily statistically significant, but when I'm reading deep down into the memo, knowing that the population is aging and that a splash playground is less appealing to an older demographic than a playground, than a pool, and a pool is going to help more lower income folks learn, and kids learn to swim. It just seems like Clark Park needs a swimming pool. And I know we obviously have to get buy-in from the community, and it's not our decision to go tonight to go pool or splash playground, but that historically is a place where so many families their kids learned to swim, and it was sort of an implicit promise. I don't know if it was a direct promise to that neighborhood, to Clark Park, that there would be a swimming pool fixed and then put in, and we didn't fulfill that promise. And so I think we really need to speed it up and try and get a pool in there as soon as we can.
And because national trends have kind of gone away from traditional lap pools and gone more to splash amenities, we asked that question in the survey that we had back in May, just that specific question, just to kind of see this beginning process, a sense of what the community might want, if they don't want a pool, if they want something more of a splash amenity. So we're still going to do that. We haven't made any decisions moving forward. Obviously, it's just kind of the beginning process, but we will ask those questions moving forward.
Councilman Granville.
Thank you, Mayor. So first off, you did exactly what we asked you to do, and I appreciate that. So don't take any of this as a dig on you all. You did exactly what you were asked admirably, as always. My own take on it is I really don't think the pools and all of these things, they're things that it's hard to say no to, because who doesn't want to add splash pads and pools and amenities? When I look at the demographics, when I look at our goal setting, one of the goals, and it's in your presentation, is that we would be at or above the citizen satisfaction survey. We are right now by 10, 12 percentage points. And so we're talking about adding splash pad and pool amenities to meet a goal that we are already currently exceeding. There are other goals we're not exceeding, right? And I grabbed a few from Rosa today. We're not exceeding, in fact, we're still behind the pavement quality index, traffic delay reduction, renewable energy, water conservation, solid waste diversion, tree coverage, composting, facilities conditions index, commercial and residential code enforcement. Those are all goals that we've set that we are not meeting. And so the idea that we would be spending money on a goal that we are already exceeding by quite a bit, actually, I think is probably not. I mean, the reason you set goals is not only to help you, yeah, now the hands go up. The reason you set goals is not only to let you know what to do, but also to let you know what not to do, right? Where are we meeting our goals, and we don't really need to spend additional resources. And one of the things that is equally frustrating for me is this study said that by 2050, we would have 102,000 more people in Tempe, 270,000 people by 2050. There is no way we're going to have 200, because every place we build has to go up now, right? And so if you look at a chart of Tempe, that's our chart of Tempe. We quit growing. We're at 2-3% a year now. And that's not likely to change given our 2040 plan, given where we say zone density will be. I mean, we're not going to start building high rises in 85284, 85283. So it seems very unlikely that those projections are realistic. And then there's a third point to that, and this goes to Councilmember Cubie's point, which I agree with, and that is we are an aging city. So if you look at our demographics of, I can show you, Mayor. If you look at our demographics, under 5 years old, we are down 15% from 2000 to 2015. 5 to 9 years old, we are down 18%.
Oh, we know.
And right, this is exactly your point. And from 10 to 14-year-olds, we're down 15%. So we, and if you look at 85284, the demographic chart of that zip code, it peaks at about 55 years old. Then there's a second grouping at about 17 or 18 years old, and it quickly dies off, right? When you look at the people coming down the pipe, it's a very small percentage. And so the idea of a splash pad, I agree with you, Councilman McCubey. I think swimming and those sort of things are where our focus should be. But frankly, the idea of spending money on a goal that we are already exceeding when we've got 10 goals that we are not exceeding just doesn't make sense to me.
To that issue, Councilmember Granville, so you think about a community survey, it's a very broad brush of a large geographic area. If you take little pockets, you'll see more granular information and data. And in this case, they've identified underserved areas. And so if you did a survey of the underserved area and asked them that question, you might get a different result. So
Well,
I don't think it's
our
fair.
community satisfaction survey
Right.
actually does have it by area and by zip
But
code
if
and by
somebody's
parcel.
80% approval of the entire city, that doesn't imply that people aren't unhappy about not having a pool.
But
there.
you
Like
You understand my point, though, is we are meeting our goal.
not
citywide.
necessarily, not for aquatics, we're underserved, and that's
Yeah.
what they're telling us.
Just
We're not meeting
If I
our
can say
goals.
something
Keith,
real
and
quick.
then Mr. Burke, then
Just in
Councilman Navarro.
thank you, Councilman Granville. Just in reference to the strategic priority goal, it's more of a broad department-wide goal for 3.16. And if you break out the different elements of the department, the target goal is 44% for national benchmark rating, but the aquatics portion of the community survey was at 59%. So that's somewhere we don't really want to be. We'd rather get up higher as far as our ratings,
So
as far
we're
as,
15% above the national average, is that right?
well, it's the bar set pretty low at 44%. We'd hope to be somewhere at 90% as far as way our ratings would come in as far as trying to move forward. So,
Councilman
and then we're
Navarro.
working with the strategic office with Rosa and her staff to kind of make adjustments to that, to kind of have some higher targets as far as moving forward.
We're way over.
So, thank you, Mayor. So I do agree, obviously there are some things that we do have to pay attention to, and we're going. Her funds, we have no control over sometimes on taking care of our streets and right-of-ways and things like that. And there's other things that you list out that we're actually achieving. Compost, doing all those things. We have now our own compost. We're already making strides in those areas. So the one thing about us in City of Tempe is the fact that, hey, we're achieving, but it's like any other city, let's just then maintain, and let's just stay where we're at. And then we slowly start to degrade. The thing is, what we like to do is try to keep on maintaining and keep on increasing the value of what our city is about. So in my opinion, I think with aquatics and with what we're trying to serve, we're underserved in my opinion. We're old in a lot of areas. That's why McClintock Pool needed a facelift. My honest opinion, it needs more amenities in that area because it's a great location. Same with Kiwanis Park, very old aging system, and then the amenities he brought up. When you look at cities like Scottsdale and Mesa, and cities that I often go to because of kids and stuff and what they have, Chandler Pools, they bring amenities there that people are attracted to. It's not just we have a pool, but we have amenities that increase the value of our residents, keeps in the value of our neighborhoods. I think the Harrelson Park idea is an excellent idea because that's a pocket, a hole that, in my opinion, that is changing. I'm selling my house actually in that area, and I'm getting families looking at my house with kids. The market dictates what's gonna happen down the road, not really what the trends are now. I have no idea what the trends are gonna be with what housing changing and stock changes. Obviously, we saw in our water bill, things went down. I kind of think about, well, a lot of people are probably moving in or switching or flipping. I'm seeing a lot of flips. I'm seeing a lot of houses getting redone. So families are coming in. But the thing is, we need to stay on top of our game, so to speak. We need to not let down our guard. And in fact, I think in this area, we've let down our guard way too long.
And to that point, the last 7 years, we've added 20,000 residents. So we're increasing in terms of population, and we're going to be studying the demographics. Vice Mayor Erdano Savage?
Yeah, I'll just echo my 2 cents because I 100% agree with what I'm hearing from Joel and Lauren. And I think that if you actually look at the analysis page, if you can go to that, Keith, I think I don't know, slide 5. I mean, there are so many areas, especially in South Tempe, that are barely being able to touch anything other than maybe going to Kiwanis, which is actually on the list, to be renovated. So 100%, I think we definitely need to work with Kiwanis and revamp that. It looks the same like when I took lessons there. I don't think anything has ever changed.
That long ago?
It's been a, whoa.
Wow.
It's all right. Yeah,
Wait a minute,
I
aren't you the
thought
oldest
that was
council member?
Mark. That was Mark.
Where?
I'm the third oldest. Just saying.
That's true.
True. But anyway, I guess I would think the same thing. I look at it when our satisfaction survey is we don't want to be average. I don't want to be average. And I do think that there probably are some areas that feel like they're underserved and that we could definitely do a lot better. So when you look at our satisfaction survey, it is for the whole city. And I would think that in these areas, they don't feel that way. I mean, they feel like we can definitely do it better, and I think we can. I 100% agree, too, that I think we should look at what's best in regards to a pool versus a splash pad, because obviously there's more splash pads throughout the city. I do like the idea of looking at that pool based on the demographics of what we're seeing in Tempe, but I see the cycle of change, too, and I see a lot of younger families coming in and staying. What they used to do is come and the kids would get a little bit older and then they'd leave and they'd go out to the East Valley. But I see now a lot of them are investing in their house, just what we want them to do. And then they have buy-in and they love their neighborhood, and we're investing in the neighborhoods and we're investing in the parks. And I think it's really important that we invest in aquatics. So I think this is a great game plan. I think it would be great for people in South Tempe. I think they would embrace it. I think they would want it. I don't know specifically what they'd want. I'd love to hear from them and see what that is. And then, work on Clark Park and see what the best bang for our buck is and what people want there, because maybe it's not a splash pad, and maybe it is more of a pool, because I think that we need to make sure that not only are we doing lessons, and I don't know, are we having a shortage or people on waiting lists when it comes to swim lessons? I guess that would be something I'd ask. You can give me that information later, because that would really dictate, I think, how we move forward. If there are classes that are full and people can't get in, and are they going somewhere else? To me, that's really important. So we need to make sure that we're addressing that. And I don't know either, when we talk about our neighborhood parks, and now we're doing the enhancement piece, our what are you calling them? The pet spray pads? Are those part of the enhancement part? Have you seen anybody like?
Dog parks, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. I just am wondering where they fall in
We're going to
regards
bring
to
this
that.
study and
Okay.
look at the
Oh.
spray pads along with the rec public value plan that's already existing, and when we update the Parks and Rec master plan, it'll all come together as one.
And to add on, as one of our tasks as a council is we always look towards the future. And this council is really the beneficiary of past decisions by past councils because they always look towards the future. I often say we make decisions that we should be looking at 15, 20, and 30 years down the road, because that's the future of what we're looking at. Our main job is to provide for the public and safety well-being of our residents. But more importantly, part of our strategic goals is the quality of life. We always talk about the quality of life of what we're trying to achieve in our community. And by having amenities that could be towards future generations, and we're putting that in play, because we had a lag. That's why we're getting caught up with our parks, with the aging infrastructure that we had. So by continuing to invest in the future of and attracting the quality of life amenities for future families, to the point where we're seeing an aging population. But guess what? At some point, we're going to be looking towards another switch coming in for that newer generation of coming in, families looking, because we are that pocket. The trend is moving back into the inner part of the cities, as opposed to what we used to say, drive till you qualify. For those that remember when houses were so cheap, everyone drove way out, but it's the opposite effect is happening. And so we just want to make sure that we're ready for that. And I think that's part of the plan, and I really do appreciate what you guys have really brought to us, because we need to start looking at those pocket areas and maintaining and improving the quality of life. Councilman Granville.
I just want to go just a few brief points. First off, I don't think pools are ever a bad investment. I don't want you to think that I'm against us doing pools and splash pads. I just don't think it's the next best dollar for us to spend, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. Particularly given that we have goals that we're not currently achieving. The thing I would also add to Councilmember Navarro's point, if you look through the packet, per 1,000 residents, we actually have more aquatic facilities than any place else in the valley. We are the #1 city in the valley, outside of Yuma, I think, is the only one that's got us beat on it. So I understand that Scottsdale has newer and better amenities. I actually agree with that we should have better amenities. I agree, we have to do something with Kiwanis. We have to renew that. And I think the same thing is true of McClintock Pool. The idea that we spent $1 million+ to renovate a pool that I can't go swim in right now, that's only open 2 or 3 months a year, but for a lifeguard, that's absurd to me, right? So let's open that pool more often and year round. The thing I'm saying is just, look, I get it. Like, we're planning for the future, but there are roads and there are facilities and there are a whole bunch of other things. And we set goals because our intention is to meet them. Let's meet all of our goals before we start trying to exceed them.
Yes, Councilman
One
Cutie.
more thing, McClintock Pool is not in northwest Tempe, and there is a really big deficit there. And if you've walked in Clark Park in that area, that neighborhood is still burning from the lack of a pool. They're still angry and upset about it. And it just doesn't McClintock does not make up for the underserved area there in South Tempe. And I think that the temperatures are getting higher and higher, and we need to provide a way for our kids to learn how to swim and keep families and communities together. And to me, that's a really good investment.
Anything else? Any other comments from council? We really appreciate this. Keep us, I know this is a continuing work in progress, so continue to come back for us, update us, and we're interested to see what happens when you reach back out to those specific pocket areas that have a deficit for aquatics. And
Okay, we'll continue on with the recommendations and move
yeah,
forward.
keep
So,
moving forward. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
All right, next item, the Rio Salado and Tempe Beach Park Master Plan.
Mamma jamma right here, boy.
What did you say?
I had a salad for
One
lunch.
more item, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a little longer though.
Get wings.
Yeah, I heard.
It's not even that. It's something about tilting the screen that makes the whole thing go dead. Yeah, it only happens when I'm in council.
Wow, we got all kinds of good, thank you. Welcome.
Hello?
Mayor, Council, Tony Miano, Deputy Public Works Director. In Field Operations, I have Bonnie Richardson, who's our Public Works Principal Planner. And our selected consultants, Christina Flora from Flora and Associates, and Diana Jacobs from Holly Street Studios. They are done an amazing job so far working on our master plan. We're really lucky to have them, that they were selected. They're known throughout the state for some of their work, so this is going to be a great showcase for them. We're here tonight to discuss the Rio Salado Tempe Beach Park Master Plan. We wanted council to see what we have done thus far in the early stages, given us, so you're able to give us input on our approach before the process gets too far along. Initially, we've been working with internal stakeholders across city departments. Before we proceed with external stakeholders, boards and commissions, and the public, we wanted to ensure council was comfortable with our approach. Second, looking at the activity zones that we've separated throughout the park, that we have a systematic, structured approach for activity, a blueprint for future investment, and a guiding document for us to help evaluate unsolicited proposals that come in from private and from the community groups. Our ask tonight is to review all the initial documentation, answer all your questions, and ensure that council is comfortable with our overall approach, and so that we can proceed with our external stakeholders and the community. We'll come back in June with our final draft proposal, and with that, I'll turn it over to Bonnie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. We are excited to be here about this project. I think it offers one of the largest opportunities for our city and our region, and we are preparing a scope that is actually overarching. So we're not coming to you today with detailed plans to build tomorrow, but ideas and dreams for the next 20 to 30 years. So our performance measure is 3.16 for the quality of life. And you can see on this slide, we have 3 ovals on the map. There is so much area all around the lake and the green spaces. We wanted to be sure we were paying attention to both sides of the lake and the river, and also looking for opportunities to extend the activities so that we're not trying to crowd everything into Beach Park. So the project purpose, of course, this is our opportunity to be visionary and really to look 20, 30, 40 years into the future, because this will not be easily accomplished in just a few years. So we're creating a roadmap that really is going to provide for a variety of activities. And I think it's important for us not just to look at how we attract regional and national attention, but also look at our neighbors across the street and see what we can do to enrich their lives. So you can see the kinds of opportunities we have, and I'm going to let Diane talk a little bit about the process we're going through.
It's an honor to be here to represent our project team, which has been doing an awful lot of work understanding this valuable asset that the city of Tempe has. In some ways, if you look at some of the maps shown previous and about to be shown, you realize that the Rio Salado Park area, including Tempe Beach Park, is really, in some ways, the center of the universe for the Valley of the Sun. It is a major destination, I'm told, more so even than most other destinations, and second only to the Grand Canyon, which you all probably know very well. So the first thing was to kind of look at it holistically. And so our team was tasked with three phases of work, primarily to analyze what you have available, not only from a physical and technical standpoint, but also social and cultural. So we spent an awful lot of time walking through the park throughout the seasons and then talking to many individuals and studying what happens below grade. The next thing was to gather input. So we talked to additional folks about exactly what it was that made their life and their jobs better. And these are folks within the staff and then folks that live around Rio Salado Park. And finally, with this input and analysis, we're putting together a conceptual plan. So today you'll have a look at a direction and how we've sort of taken this very large swath of land with multiple possibilities and began to look at it more systematically and began to sort of establish ideas. And so we really need your input along those lines.
And then we know it's important to collaborate with our other projects so that we don't get citizen fatigue with so many planning outreach efforts. So we're working carefully with the urban core, trying to back up our community meetings. And also we've been incorporating ideas from the character area plan. These are the important dates of our process. So we got started with the research. We're now moving into the outreach, and we do want to come to you first. And then we will be addressing, we will be doing public outreach. We will be doing stakeholder outreach. And again, the stakeholders for this project are broad. They include people who run events here, people who live around it, work around it. You've got the boating element. So we have a large stakeholder list to call in and listen to. Then we're going to, after your advice tonight, we're going to go out to the commissions and even do some informational opportunities in the park itself so that we're actually getting people are coming through using the park. After that, we will come back again at work study session to be able to explain everything that we heard and get your direction on that, and then hopefully come back the following month to be able to get approval of the plan.
Donna, can I ask you a quick question? Okay, yes. So when you're talking about the outreach, are you talking to those individuals? I know there's a list in here and it's on the, about that are doing those special events, because we have a lot of iconic special events, so they're part of that discussion too?
Right,
Okay.
you bet. I've got them listed, and so we're trying to do it, we'll be doing it in several groups.
Okay.
But they are users of the park, and they probably have some good ideas. And of course, we're working with our recreation staff.
Of course.
Because there are so many activities in Beach Park. So let's talk about current conditions. Right now, these are some of our largest events. A lot of people, and most of the time when people think about the lake, they think about these big events. And our staff has done a remarkable job at being able to really create and functionally and efficiently develop some of these larger events. We also, though, want to look at the flip side of that. So when we look at the condition of the park, when it's not having a large activity, what we often see is that it's empty. This was the pictures taken at noon from one of the high rises, and we didn't see a person in the park. No one goes to lunch there, goes to picnic. You don't see kids playing anywhere there. So we think we can make it a much better community park while we're also making it a larger amenity. The picture on the lower right is taken across the lake and looking back at the city. And it's on the north side, you see a lot of dirt. You see a lot of just vacant areas. And we look at those as prime opportunities to be able to do something great. I'm going to go with placemaking here.
Yes. I mean, one thing to think about when we look at Rio Salado Park, and really that's what it's called in its singularity. It's not so much, and we had to kind of learn this. We've had a lot of really excellent help from staff, sort of understanding the way perceptions are sort of put forth within the city and the way people understand it, from smaller entities to larger groups like ASU and sort of the private owners around the edge of the lake. It really is in some ways sort of a grand public park within an urban environment. So to that end, we look at this a lot like a permanent point of pride for the city of Tempe. So we know that the events have been extremely successful, but will its life continue with and beyond these particular events? So as part of the epicenter idea, we realized that not only are we walking distance with some of the major amenities within the Central Valley, like Papago Park and ASU and the Desert Botanical Garden, et cetera, but we're also extremely close to the airport and other sort of cities that are up and coming around the edges. So I think it's important to understand the context is that we're looking at really not just a local amenity, but also a regional and national treasure. So how can we look at this instead of just simply a place where we need to improve amenities and add activities for people, as a place of great sort of public pride and a true space for Tempe for generations to come.
So the numbers you see there are as of 2017, but as you were discussing earlier, we know the numbers are going to grow, and we want to be ready to grow with it. So how we approached it is to try establishing principles. It's really important for us to set the tone and the standards for development over a long period of time. You want a consistent vision and level of quality. So we're also, what we're going to be showing you is very flexible. You can see that we were in a design charrette with our staff. We had directors, people who are on the ground, work in the parks, work in the lake, and really tried to get from the inside what's it take to maintain it and run it.
One of the important reasons for putting together a list of principles is that, for better or for worse, nobody has a magic wand, and we can't make all this happen at once. When you talk to people, do you have a magic wand?
Wish. We wish.
I'll help you look for it. One of the interesting things about Chris and our work on public spaces, regardless of the city that we're in, is that consistent themes seem to come up. Things as simple as we need to make sure that for the long run we can maintain the spaces. Also things as simple as, we know there's a grand event a few times a year and there's races, et cetera, but what about a Tuesday afternoon? Then there's also folks that look at the park from afar, which is equally as important, from on the north side, and then also coming into the city from the west side. So as we kept listening and hearing input from so many different people, there were consistent themes that continued to arise. So the idea isn't just that we give you this master plan that tells you where to put things, because that should happen to a certain degree organically when people come and ask to do particular projects, or when the city shifts one way or another. I know there were discussions about demographics earlier. We can't all predict exactly what's going to happen. But what we can do is put together a list of principles that can help guide the process so that when these grand ideas come along, you all have the tools to say, well, that's a very interesting idea. We already have that. Or we want you to do it this way. Or your designated location is going to be on the east side. And that way there's sort of this orderly, for the most part, yet organic growth. So the principles that sort of floated to the top was that this area should have public access. And there should be a sense of ownership by the citizens of Tempe. And not only those that live here, but those that come to school here and those that work here. Connectivity is essential. You can not so, without much difficulty, ride your bike from this area all the way up to the McDowell Mountains. I mean, most people don't really know that, and this connectivity is critical. There's also spaces within, I don't know, 100 yards of this park that you cannot reach. So whether it's bringing things that are already connected back down to Rio Salado Park, but also opening up avenues for cyclists and pedestrians and carriages and other forms of transportation. Really, regardless of whether you have a green bench or a blue bench, folks in Arizona love shade. Shade is just a consistent thing, and when we select trees and when we decide on structures, shade should be a very important part of what's developed. The spaces along the park should be public and private for a genuine urban mix. And also we should account for a variety of users, activities, and interests, very high-end, very simple, very kind of lowbrow and special at the same time. And also this should go without saying, but the moves that are made along this path should be sustainable in nature in terms of the environment and energy and infrastructure. So those are kind of starting to guide our hand as we begin to put this plan together.
So we worked on this plan. It's, I don't know, about 10 or 12 feet long. And we were going to try to bring it in to show you, because you really can't tell from what you saw in your packet. So it's exciting, but it's big. And being able to get your arms around it and figure out where to start was part of the process. So as we mentioned, connectivity is important. And we've highlighted Rio Salado on there because it's also important to know that's the main way people are getting in, certainly from the south. Being able to have view corridors and access between buildings from ASU and back out is really important as well. So you'll hear us talk more about that as we go on. Here's what we came up with. We are calling these activity zones, although we were almost hesitant to call it a zone, because we are not saying that this is hard and fast. We just looked at what activities are work well together. If you want to be at a rock climbing wall or an outdoor gym or exercising, that's all compatible, and maybe we can do that better in one area. So starting from the west, ecology in the arts is what we're calling it now, although with new buildings going in, there may be an interesting tech concept that we can bring into the park and reflect what we've got around it. Beach parks, and you'll see this is plural for a reason. The north side offers some great opportunities, and we think if we call attention to it this way, a lot more people will be attracted. And then, of course, the marina. Now, flanking both ends at Beach Park on the north would really be this adventure idea, entertainment, and athletics. So we already have tennis courts. We know there's an interest in having additional courts. So, no, I'm sorry, I said tennis. Volleyball.
I'm like tennis.
No, volleyball, sand volleyball, I'm sorry.
Sure not pickleball?
No, like pickleball. So we want to work with what we've got. We've got some good stuff. We're not saying start all over.
Just a question before we move on. So looking at the map, sorry,
Go back.
going back to the map, yes. So the area between ecology and arts and beach parks on the north side, just east of the bridge. So what is the intention of that area? Because that's not in those. Am I taking too literally the?
Yeah, these are just bubbles. So it says above it adventure. So that's the idea about.
So I know there's been some interest, and I've heard from Phil Amorosi, a community leader, about a sculpture park or sculpture garden. Is that under consideration?
Oh, for sure. We looked at the Arts Center. At one time, there was an idea for a sculpture park near and surrounding the Arts Center. So,
It's supposed to be east of it,
yeah,
between the railroad bridge and the TCA.
right. So it seems like the logical place.
South side.
So Phil's proposal was doing it on the north side, but I'm not sure he knew that we had earlier looked at having it be associated with the Arts Center.
I think in some ways, when you look at the way it's divided up here, and it is kind of conceptual in nature as far as the energy that exists that we could build upon, rather than sort of recreate and designate things in a particular way, it just felt like it was rising to these kind of different sort of activities. It is important, though, to look at it holistically and make sure that when there's a sculpture park, for example, located in a particular place, which east of the TCA does make a lot of sense, but for example, to consider the overall. And some of the things to consider is available infrastructure and also transportation and all these other things that when people walk by say, this would be a really beautiful place. You know, we want to make sure that all of these things are appreciated appropriately. The other thing is views to Rio Salado Park are very important. It's, you know, a lot of times we drive by Millennium Park or Central Park or, you know, Olympic Sculpture Park in DC. It's not always being in it.
Okay. So we're just going to give you a few vignettes. And again, we kept this sketchy because we're not trying to dictate what might happen. We're trying to excite you to give us more ideas. So with the eco zone, it just works with the native habitat there. You can enhance it. You can see some of the activities that we've put on the slide. And we also think that entries to the lake, the river and the lake area are important. And Diane had mentioned she comes across that bridge all the time on Priest, and you never really know there's a park down there. So perhaps we can look at how we draw attention.
I didn't even know we were allowed to go down there. Honestly.
Are we allowed to?
Apparently it's a thing.
Well, you get to decide if that's a thing, because right now there's a no trespassing
Okay,
sign
so I'm
down
not,
there.
okay, I thought,
Ideas.
yeah.
Yeah, and even a tall bridge that juts out over there. We've got a lot of bird watchers and.
I was going to say.
Yeah, and the Sonoran Institute is actually quite interested in what we're doing. And we just threw in a few pictures of programming possibilities just to show you even what's possible. That dinner on the bridge was amazing. So lots to do. And I will mention that one of our questions will be.
We do that.
No.
2 years.
I attended that.
She did. She can tell you all about it.
It was a pop-up dinner in April of 2014. There was a company called Dinner Lab, and they did pop-up events, and you didn't know until the night before where it was going to be. So this was great. It was
Especially
great.
at sunset.
Yeah. So things have been done, and we can do even more of that. There is a question about whether it's appropriate to have a physical performance stage versus always having performances and bands set up. So that could also be appropriate shade when it's not being used. So just an idea. Here again, between the bridges, that view that I showed you, that dirt spot's great looking back at the city. And there are little pockets where we want to be able to bring in economics to it with coffee shops, wine bar, restaurants, rentals for different kinds of sports, that type of thing.
The other thing we're looking at as we're looking at each of these vignettes is we're trying to look at ways to have other events in other locations along the lake so that you can have multiple events at the same time, or if Tempe Beach Park needs to kind of recover after a big, huge weekend, there's other options for other events that could happen elsewhere. So that's what the pink circles are, is just sort of an event space, whether it's another low-key stage area or just the way that Earth is shaped so that it makes it easier to program.
So even at the marina, you know, and I will just mention that parking is going to be an issue if we're drawing a lot of interest in coming down here. So maybe when we are putting something in at the marina, we're thinking ahead about, is there parking that's flanked with a restaurant or something else? Really thinking through how easy is it for people to get to this venue. Again, we've got lots of water sports. Let's provide little spots where it's narrow for people to view what's going on and make it become more celebratory.
One thing that's important to note is that a lot of the ideas that we're pulling from come from the notion of folks moving back into the urban core. And another reason why we had these radial sort of diagrams showing walking distance is not only is this a point of pride, but it is home. And really that's the foundation of this conversation. If you look at the slides that you see here, it's sort of a symbol of taking our public spaces and putting them not only to double, triple, or quadruple use, but every space along Tempe Beach Park should have 12 things that could happen all at the same, or all in the same space at different times. So this is an example of kind of beautiful moments, but sort of also ordinary moments. And right now, the energy is concentrated only in a few, as Bonnie puts it, kind of almost love too much areas. So how can we spread that love, so to speak, around the banks of the lake?
Way to do that.
There we go. So they pushed even beyond rural a bit because this connectivity is so important. We do have a new pedestrian bridge going in. That's key. We even have a little area where it could be a place people could touch water of some sort.
New pedestrian bridge.
Yes.
East side.
Where the dam, yeah.
It's actually drawn on the map there, that orange.
I've never really heard, it's always sort of been 6 months away.
Well, yeah, I think it's 6 months away. I don't know. I don't know. It's transportation that's managing that, but it seems to be a real project. And it can have small pocket parks.
6 years ago.
That's awesome.
Go through there.
You know, when we look at the east side and we see everything that's happening along Rural Road and other kind of thoroughfares, and especially what's happening with ASU, things are going to take place along the lake regardless. So the question really we had to ask ourselves was, you know, how do we guide these things in the best interests of the city of Tempe? And so how can we establish these ground rules and principles such that you're somewhat in control of how it comes to fruition over the long period of time on behalf of the citizen?
So just briefly, we know that in order to finance something like this, we really need collaborations and partnerships. There's a lot of excitement around the Rio Salado with John McCain's Legacy Project, and that's a 45-mile stretch, but they're starting because we did a pretty good job with the lake. So I think we're way ahead of the game, and we can work together and see how they might be looking at financial structures for maintaining and managing that kind of a length of the river, and we need to look at that too. So that's what we're suggesting there. And then finally, input and comments from you. So we have a couple of questions. Do you feel that this is the right platform as we go out to talk
Yes.
with groups?
Yep.
Wow,
Got it.
great.
Next one.
Done. Is the approach we presented appropriate for expanding the amenities?
Yes.
Great. And what's the right balance of events and parks?
Be determined. I'm scared.
Because right now, it's kind of, there are two different ends of the spectrum, and both recreation and parks has been told that we're both important with what we're doing. We just want to know how you want it to come together.
Councilman Navarro, then Councilman Granville.
And I know there's a lot of things, and I just want to first say thank you, and this has got to be exciting. I mean, it's got to be a fun project. I mean, hands down, it's like you said, the second most visited place in Arizona. which means that we have a chance to really do something special here. And when we think about things like special things, it's the detail of things, that we have an opportunity to take our time, do something smart, do something that's not cheesy and cheap, but do something that looks very professional and well thought out, so to speak. I know that me and Councilmember Granville have been tackling the volleyball issue, which we see as a tremendous big deal and an opportunity to possibly do that on the north side of the lake, which brings in things like AVP and some other events potentially down the road, along with regional games and collegiate games and local high school games that need those things desperately. You talk about things with connectivity, I think that's beautiful. I mean, when you guys just look at the project as it is right now, I see it even bigger because as we go the Greenbelt up to Scottsdale, as we get to the marketplace, as we continue down the legacy of John McCain, you think about the connectivity to those places and even to the airport potentially one day by bike, if that's possible. But those things are really, really huge. The other things we talk about, you're talking about is also connectivity to the park, the mountain, Pepco Park, which is, if you look at the whole region, it's just massive. When you talk about the green space down past by the dam and enhancing that, I think about, the values of the bird watchers, the values with wildlife, the values with all those things that we have there, but then the values with businesses that build along that side of the lake too, because that's actually a beautiful scenery to have, along with everything else. So those are the things that continue to add value of what kind of construction we're doing. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit, but when you talk about the residential aspect too, and we brought this up, it's the people that we're seeing it. I mean, I've been down on the weekends and just riding my bike, the bike rentals, the people riding around the lake on bike rentals, the people utilizing what we have right now, which is not a lot. It queries the shops that could potentially go in Beach Park, restaurant type of stuff that can go on some of the edges, so there's a little more destinational spots to hit to. Those things really pop out when you talk about. The other thing that pops out is water caps, is the fact that we have to think about possible ports of maybe these water caps coming in and from to and from on both sides of the lake. I like basically the north side, south shore, north shore. Those terms like there, add identity and destination of what we're trying to say, and it puts a picture of what this town's all about, so to speak. And then, finally, just the opportunities of what else down the road. I know I had a person talk to me about making a wave. It's a wave concept that runs on, I don't know how it does it, but like some sort of pulley system, but it creates a wave on the east side of the lake that actually, I don't know how they would do it, but you surf on it. And and then you break off and he showed me the concept, and I was like, wow, you could do that. I don't know if those things are down the road, but it's like there's endless possibilities, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and I think you guys are spot on.
Councilman Granville.
Yeah, great presentation. This exceeded any expectation. This is just phenomenal. A couple of things I would say. First off, I would say sooner is better than later. Certainly go through the process, talk to the community, do those things. But we have a great, I think the view, whether it's right or wrong, is that Tempe Beach Park right now is a great event location where people also go. And there's a lot of things that you presented here that make it an ongoing amenity. So at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, there's a reason to go there. On a Wednesday at 6 o'clock, there's a reason to go there. Right now, my uncle was in town from Rochester because they're buried and miserable. And I took him down to the lake, and he's like, this is a great lake. He's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, we just walk down to TCA, and we turn around, and we walk back. That's what you can do there, right? And not to say that's a bad thing. There's a lot of beautiful grass, and there's a lot of great things, but literally it is a very expensive walking path. Yeah, there's paddling, there's stand-up, there's stuff, but there could be so much more. And so whether it's as simple as oversized chess pieces, whatever, there are things that can go with that are $3,000 to $5,000 items that can go quick, right? I would love to see those after you've gotten resident feedback. The other thing I would say, and we had a meeting a while ago with a bunch of event people, is there needs to be multiple smaller events going on. So the idea that you book the lake isn't really a strong model, right? You might book the area around TCA as a zone and do a 200 to 400 person event there. And you might book the area, east or the north side or the marina area or whatever. And then you might also have a 30,000 person event at Tempe Beach Park. And so the model for me is one of multiple events, not all of which are marquee events, going simultaneously, because it creates a diversity of users. Not everyone does Ironman, not everyone does rock and roll, not everyone wants to go to the Aloha Festival. And so if you can get lots of 150 to 400 person events at 3 or 4 locations simultaneously, I think that from a programmatic standpoint, it creates a better sense of equity in usage.
Vice Mayor Nano Savage?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty great. So Chris and Diana, thank you for your work, and Bonnie always for everything that you do, because it does just really kind of get you super excited of all the possibilities that they could be. And the one thing I saw you mention it in one of the areas, and when you're out doing the outreach, I think what's going to be really important is I love the idea of making it a community park for all of our Tempe residents, is how are they getting there and where are they parking and where are they accessing the park? Because I think a lot of people feel that there's a perception that there's nowhere to park, and maybe that's just a matter of us letting people know where there is the ability to park, and then the enhancement of those the access points and kind of what those look like too. I think that's really important. I know we've been working in regards to where that old abutment is, and that could be like just a really great, cool entry point, especially coming from that public parking from that new building. And so one of those things we've been talking about doing the Veterans Memorial, which has kind of been a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, it does make me think like, okay, how are people getting to the park and how are they accessing the park? Because I don't want that to be a barrier. And is it one of those things that we need to encourage more people to do, like the bike share program, or do we want them to go with their bikes? Because if you look at, like you said, the people that are there in a mile, and then you look at the people that are 2 miles, and then you keep going out and out, I mean, I think we have to take those things into consideration. So I'm hopeful that that becomes part of your plan. I noticed over by the boathouse, I think you had a parking garage. Well, I don't know if people were going to park in the parking garage that have maybe small kids to walk over to, the other side of the lake. So
We have several spots that we'll just talk
Great.
with people about.
Yeah.
And I did forget to mention the water taxi, but we have kind of just peppered it with docks where you can just have neat Adirondack chairs and people can sit there or they can wait for the.
I will tell you, the people over at State Farm when we were there would love to bring back the ferry. So put that out there.
David,
Thank
Councilor
you.
Spire.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I also think that as stuff develops down on the other side of rural, I think there's going to be all the more reason for people to want to have like the ferry and the water taxi. My favorite usage I've seen of Tempe Town Lake, it seems like a lifetime ago at Beach Park, was when Pokemon Go was at its height.
Yeah.
It was like the glory days. I mean, but you could go down to Tempe Beach Park and there were just little groups of people and then crowds of people over another, and there were, people, I don't know if they were doing it legally, but people like selling Pokemon hats and, it was just people everywhere doing different things. And some people just out enjoying the beach park, and maybe they were just driving over the bridge and they saw a bunch of crowd of people out there and they thought, hey, it'd be fun to stop and let the kids run around. That was really cool. Now we can't, Pokemon Go isn't as big as it was, and maybe the next Pokemon Go will cause another spike like that or something. But usages like that really, I think, are exciting, and it makes it feel like the place to be when there's activities and things that are going on. I think Pokemon Go was an accident for us. I think we can be a little bit more intentional about having different kinds of activities down there. I mean, silly things like the oversized chessboard, or obviously when we had the splash pad there was an attraction. There's been talk, and I don't know where we are on this, about the possibility of a zip line, and I know some of us have been quite supportive of that.
It's in the list of
It's
suggestions.
on there.
And I know that there was some movement
Yeah.
about the zip line, and then all of a sudden the movement kind of stopped moving, and I don't really know why or understand what happened there. How can we get that moving again? Because
Multimodal transit? Seriously.
Right.
People could commute, pay a
It-
daily
Talk about
fee.
traffic,
mean,
man.
First of all, I think having this, thank you,
Fastest moving traffic in
Chris and Diana and Bonnie and Tony and staff for really coming up with something, because we've seen other iterations that's been sitting on a shelf for Tempe Beach Park. but I think now we're at the point where we're going to move forward. And to some of the comments that have been made, I'll be honest with you. I mean, if our weather was like it is today, 365 days a year, we would have a completely different park down there. But we got to look at the reality. So a lot of this stuff has to be sequenced in and how we do it. Obviously, the shade. What are we doing about the tree canopy? What are we doing for the walkability to make sure? Because believe it or not, most of the time it's more hot than it is not here in our city. So like, as we continue to move forward, sky's the limit. I think, there's been talks about a merry-go-round. There's been talks about the zip line. I mean, there's been so many different iterations and ideas. All throw it up in there, and I think now's the time we're looking at move forward. I will caution, make sure that we continue to preserve the big events that really help put Tempe Beach Park on the map, because some of those signature events they're historic in nature. Everything from the Kiwanis 4th of July to the Oktoberfest. There's other stuff that's going to be happening. You got the Ironman and the rock and roll and some things that have really taken off. And now they have the Innings Festival, the triathlons for the NCAA working that. There's some signature events that we really need that are sacred that we need to work with. But then I do agree with the other comment that was talked about, other pockets of parts of the park. We talked about pockets regarding aquatic center for the need of certain aquatic facilities. There's pockets of the park that a lot of people may not even know about. And it comes down to what are we doing to advertise those different spaces. I remember going to the Ballet of the Stars just east of the Tempe Center for the Arts. It was phenomenal.
Still going.
It's still going. I mean, I know, but just like there's certain parts. I mean, there was talk between the bridges. There's talks, there's other parts of the lake that we could utilize that are probably underutilized. So I really appreciate everything that's going forward.
When we come back, we will bring you some ideas about phasing that you can look at how we might be able to do a couple small things along with a big thing, and how you might look at starting to activate all different corners.
And I know this sounds, I say cliches, but I always envision, now that we have the flour mill that's getting completely redeveloped and the old flour mill itself, they're talking about putting a restaurant. Who would have thought that, like the weather is today, you go grab a sack lunch and you go sit in Tempe Beach Park across the street, throw a blanket down, and during your lunch break you read, you get a little downtime and you come back. And who's to say that's not going to happen with some of the more offices that are coming in here and the more amenities that we provide with that? I'm even thinking like the Hollywood Bowl. Okay, I'm stretching a little bit where you can bring down there, get a box of wine or what have you, and then get a bucket of chicken, not really, whatever. I mean, like the old KFC days when I was a kid. Bucket of chicken, like you used to go get a bucket.
It sells buckets of chicken right there.
What's that?
Someone open a place.
No, I'm just saying, it could be sandwiches, pizzas, chicken, the KFC bucket as a kid. But stuff like that is kind of cool if you think about the opportunities. And then obviously we're going to program it with.
So Mayor, my question I was asking, just real quick, my question was not rhetorical. I really would like to know, like, why did the movement on the zip line stop? Because I know there were people wanting to do it.
There's a whole bunch.
I know
there's a lot of
risk,
stuff.
but
there's risk management involved. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it just seemed like we were making progress, and then like a year ago it just stopped.
I think we're looking at a bigger picture instead of doing one-offs. I think that could have been it.
Stopped for this. Yeah. It was stopped for this.
Because instead of doing one-offs, because then a whole bunch of, instead of looking at a bigger, I think that's what helped propel the discussion we're having today. It's not dead.
That's the thing. And I just want to say, and I know this might be, for some, might be a little bit rough, but this is me personally. I know you talk about shade, tree canopy. I value the fact that, we do live in a desert. I understand that, but I also understand that we need to put money into shade, and shade means water and certain types of trees, and bigger shade. I know this might rub some other people wrong, and I get that, but my vision is, I know we do a good job around the city, try to be conscious of water, right-of-ways, things like that. They're efficient, but I think there's things like the lake and the lake edge that we need to say we do these things because there's value behind it, and there's value with the shade and the larger trees that provide that, your cottonwoods that even are kind of somewhat indigenous to some areas around riverbeds, I guess, so.
It used to not be.
Yeah.
It'd be great to look at the potential for solar lit pathways. I know they've done that in the Netherlands. They're just beautiful because we need to have, we don't necessarily want to use electricity to power the lights there. We could be really inventive and creative. And thanks so much for putting a permanent stage at Tempe Beach Park. I think that's greatly needed. It's so expensive for events to put a is it something like $50,000 with something like that to each time to assemble a stage. And lastly, I just want to make the point that with all the development along the lake, this is going to be the neighborhood park, especially Tempe Beach Park, for a lot of residents. And we need to consider that it's their neighborhood park. So we also have to consider our dogs and making sure that we have spaces where dogs can run and, perhaps water feature for the dogs at Tempe Town Lake, because this is a place that's great. Yeah, glad to hear it. Thanks so much for all the hard work.
Oh, you bet.
So if I could make a quick comment, just to sort of echo some of the things that I heard. The details are extremely important. Part of the reason why there's an architect and a landscape architect both on this is to push and pull on those things. The value of a shaded, tree-lined walk is tremendous compared to the expense. And one of the things in evening things out and allowing Tempe Beach Park to still be sort of the jewel in the overall project is to create a loop, a viable loop that has a consistent level of care throughout and high quality. And once you have this viable loop, it's almost like a parkway or a running course or a bicycle path, similar to some of the precedent that we're suggesting, then it's almost as if people will believe that this thing will come to fruition. So as we begin to come up with suggestions for implementation, we would start to say, that we would even out the experience throughout the entire park with shade and with this loop, perhaps, with your support. The wonderful thing about this project is that there's no shortage of passion, from volleyball to the zip line. There's so many people that want to come down, even with a kiosk, and sell amazing coffee. They would do it in a second. So it's almost like if you build it, will they come? And clearly State Farm has come, but how about, the rest of the fabric? So the next stage is really kind of a roadmap. And this is a way for you to have a tool for organization and sort of leadership, so that this is a long-term idea, not a short-term idea, and that when opportunities present themselves, you can plug them in, as you suggest, very, very quickly, because you have kind of a vision of the overall. And so really, you may not have, and I know this isn't our job to get into sort of economic development and implementation, but in some ways, by putting together a plan such as this with your input, we are really, Tempe is really exercising its sort of position of currency. And so we work with other cities sometimes. Public funding is really a challenge, but you might consider, the wealth that you have in terms of sort of guiding this effort. So I would invite you to sort of think about that and have people, participate in terms of financial support and economic development, and also the exciting possibility of the return on investment that this amenity will have in the future.
This is great. Move onward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great consultants.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's just been terrific.
This is kind of a fun project, you gotta admit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's the best.
Yeah.
Seriously, for the state.
We have a really
seriously.
good team.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, next agenda item is future agenda items. Anybody have anything? See none. The next item on agenda is a call to the audience for the committee of the whole. There are no committee of the whole items listed under section 4A as well as 4B. So there is a call to the audience regarding any of the items listed on items progress that anyone in the audience can address, because it is listed on this agenda. Could you please get my attention now? See, look to my council colleagues. Anybody have any updates? Councilman Granville?
We have one on Denell Plaza. I think that's about where we are. And there's a couple of pictures that go with it. So the initial idea, I had a graffiti artist come to me and say, hey, there's no place for me to practice doing graffiti. I spent 6 months living at Venice Beach, where there's actually a graffiti wall that you book it with the city, and you go and you get a day and you do your graffiti, and the next day somebody else is going to come and graffiti over your graffiti. And it's just a way to keep doing it. The idea was to make the building that we own at Denell Plaza, the center one, be a temporary use for that. I spoke with the property owners, and they were none too keen on somebody doing that every couple of days. also from a city standpoint, we just don't even have the process to have a wall like that exist. I would love for a wall like that to exist. The Tempe Beach Park would be a great place for it, or somewhere along the lake, a graffiti wall. I don't imagine that there'd be a lot of support for that. I think it'd be a great idea. So when I went and talked to the Denell Plaza people and said, and Newtown, they said, yeah, we'll do that. That'll be fun. And I didn't think much of it. And about a month later, I came back and I got all the people back together and said, so we should talk about this some more. And they said, oh, we're already doing it. We talked to you and we thought about it, and we talked to New Leaf and we talked to Tempe A Go-Go, and we're already doing it. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, we're doing it in a week from Friday. I was like, that's it? You're just doing it? And they're like, yeah, there were people who wanted to do it. It's all done. And so these are the photos of what they did. They're actually not on the wall. Most of them are actually wood that's mounted to the wall, and then the painting is on the wood. So that also gives the flexibility to take that wood off and make it inside any of the buildings. You can see that's when they actually painted the mailboxes that are no longer in use. And there's just some great work that was done. And so, really this is a product of Newtown getting a suggestion and running with it before I even could meet back with them again. Along as well with a New Leaf, as well with the artists, and it was just phenomenal. So there's no reason for this committee to exist anymore because it happened anyway. Certainly I don't think it happened because of me. I think it just happened. But whatever, I'm happy. Progress is progress. So at any rate, I think at this point, this committee can close out. But if there's ever an interest in making a practice wall somewhere, whether it's at around the lake or someplace else, I think I would love to do that. I'd love to work on that. But I don't know of any other locations outside of the spot we owned at Denell Plaza. So I'm kind of out of locations anyway.
Mr. Mayor, so I just want to commend some folks that brought this to fruition. Rob Moore, whose vision, my understanding, he had this vision for a long time. He's from our Arts Commission, David Crummy from Newtown, and Evan Liggins from Tempe Art A Go-Go, and then Justin Stewart, who helped Evan navigate the city system. And then the artists, Steve Caballero, Noah Baez, Champ Stiles, Nils Thede, Lucretia Terra, Killian Manley, and Ryan Gentry.
That's great. All right, anybody else have any updates, any of the committees that are listed? I do have one announcement, and it's an important one as we're coming up to tax season. The Tempe Community Council has been operating a volunteer income tax assistance tax site, providing free tax preparation services for low and moderate income taxpayers in Tempe since 2002. This has been 15 years. And it's opened up again this Saturday, February 3rd. It will be held at the Gracie's. We have a site at Gracie's Village right on Apache. In 2017, 70 IRS certified volunteers gave 2,260 hours to prepare e-file tax returns. And in 2017, the Tempe site completed 1,730 tax returns, which includes 394 tax returns for internal students at Arizona State University. An additional 359 Tempeans utilized the do-it-yourself option of free online accounting software at myfreetaxes.com. Now, each year, this is important, each year over $2 million are refunded by the services of the tax site, helping provide basic needs to those who need it most in our own community, and really supporting some of the local businesses in our community because they do get additional income back from this. This service helps save taxpayers a lot of money in filing and preparation fees, but more importantly, it really helps them get the tax credits that they may qualify for, which are often missed a lot of times, as we all probably know. Its important partners in this free site service is our important partners is ASU's W.P. Carey School of Accountancy, who encourages seniors accounting students to become certified tax preparers, and senior accounting students make sure that they can help give back to the community. As I mentioned, Gracie's Village is hosting a room for this site, and right across the street at the Knights of Pythias, they will also allow those individuals who seek this service to be able to park on their property because parking is tight. And the Internal Revenue Service and the City of Tempe and the grant sponsors, we want to thank all of you and all the volunteers from Tempe Community Council. It's this Saturday from 9 to noon, and then on Saturdays from 5 to 7 p.m. on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So make sure you get out, spread the word. Just also, we actually got an award for the Earned Income Tax Credit through the National League of Cities. We're a model that cities across the country come to us to look at how we did the Earned Income Tax Credits program. So thanks again to our staff and all the volunteers for making sure this happens, especially this time of year. That's all I have, Mr. Ching.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to express the heavy hearts that our police department and city employees feel today at the untimely passing of our canine, one of our newest canines to our support, our officer, Zeus, who died unfortunately today from an autoimmune disorder. So he was just in service for a very brief time, but he made a big impact on our city and on our police department, and he will be missed. So thank you.
With that, we are adjourned.